Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on another Betsy's Culinary Zoom calls, forums, talks, whatever you want to call it. We're excited and really thrilled that you guys could all join us today because it's an exciting one. I'm joined today by David and Alexis of House of Motor, and we're going to be talking beer and more specifically our fantastic Betsy Rosa beer that they produce for us, but then also some of the other exciting things that they do and how they do it, and a peek behind the curtain, so to speak. So again, like always, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to type that into the Zoom group chat. And if you are online watching on Facebook Live, you can go ahead and comment on the comment section, and we will compile everybody's questions and try to address them all either as we go, or we'll save it towards the end, depending on how it goes. But without further ado, Alexis and David.
Hey, everybody. So, hi, my name is David. I'm being joined by Alexis, my business partner in this venture. Just to give you all a quick introduction about ourselves. Alexis is an architect and a designer. He was voted one of the best top five architects in South Florida. I am a chemist and a biomedical engineer. And we both shared a passion for, not only beer, but also anything that is related to, that is crafted, that is art. And Alexis is going to give you guys a little bit of an overview of our company and what we stand for, okay?
So hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, David. Before I start to talk about, we're going to do a brief introduction about what is our brand about it, and how actually that partnership with the Betsy Hotel actually surged and actually happened, since that we share the same core values and this kind of like the same vision in two different like industries, but also they merge together with a beautiful product that we put together with them. And I would like to share a small video about our brand. It's actually a minute long. I'm gonna just basically switch the screen and put the video, and then after that I'm gonna give you a 5 cents about the brand, and then David will follow with me about like getting more specific about the product that we're developing for the Betsy and the beer, and more technical about like that beautiful like refreshing thing. So let me switch the screen, and I'm actually gonna play the video. Hope that everybody can see it. If not, you can raise your hand, and hopefully we can replay it. So let's go. Okay, so I know that a lot of you is gonna say, we don't saw any beer on the video, we just saw a bike running around Miami. So that's why we're gonna explain about what we are and what we do. House of Motor is actually, as David introduced to you guys, it's born out of our passion. We're actually, I'm an architect as a profession, and he's a chemical engineer. I'm more in charge of the brand, in charge about who we are. And House of Motor is something that is actually, it's just out of a friendship, but it basically was born about like the collaboration sense of it. We as designers, architects, or at least professionals, let's call it, we like to do collaborations in different industries, and that collaboration is what made that brand happen. That crafted lifestyle that we actually describe in our brand is something that we actually rooted for it's because it's kind of like this aim or this idea of going back to our hands and create something that is not just common, it's just basically tailor-made, you know? So either our beers or either our bikes. Yes, we actually design bikes. We actually design those products that are really carefully like designed and put together. You know, I'm gonna share a little bit about our presentation. But that methodology is we apply that not just about like any product that we do, but also about our beers. And that's why we're a brand that is focused about collaboration. And that's why I think is that collaboration with the Betsy and putting something together for them, it basically is right in our alley about like putting things and collaborating with chefs, you know, Chef Andrew, the hotel, you know, what they are, what we are, you know, and actually put products together that are actually born out of our hands, you know. And craft beer is one of the things that we basically rooted for, as well as motorcycles, you know. So basically it's a lifestyle brand at the end of the day, you know. We, as we can see in that picture, I hope that everybody can see my screen. We designed that bike, that it comes out of the same kind of like sense of excellence about like when we put something together, we actually want to be proud about it, you know. Our beers are the same. Our beers are actually really take care of, from the ingredients to the recipes, and actually the way that we manufacture them, the way that we control the product, and actually the way that we label the products are actually the same type of like excellence, or at least that we want to achieve, and putting that a little bit more on what we're doing. It's not just like the liquid, you know? And that's why I think is like David is going to explain more about like how is this recipes go and how it's been that tailor-made for the Betsy. But this is something that we also want to basically route for, you know. So any product that we put together for this brand is basically going to come from that sense of that sensitivity about like crafting something for a purpose. You know, either if it's a bike, if it's like a beer, either if it's other things, you know. So, and that is our sense of collaboration with different brands, you know. And that's about like House of Motor is being born out of it. This is just like a little bit of our corporate presentation. I think it's more interesting to get focused on the beers and the product, and what we did with the Betsy, I think is a round of comments, a round of questions. I mean, I think we can clarify a lot of your questions. I don't want to take like anything else from what we're here today to talk, which is basically the Betsy Rosa. And then also I think is I'm gonna basically give that my word to David so he can explain more about like the product itself and how basically we get to where we are, you know?
All right. Thank you, Alexis, and thank you, Andrew, for the introduction. So I kind of wanted to go over a little bit on, and again, and please feel free to ask questions through the chat. As Chef Andrew said, I will make sure that I'll answer those questions either as we go or at the end. And if there is not enough time, we'll give you guys our contact information, and you can shoot us an email, and we'll make sure to get answers for you guys. But I wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of an overview on beer brewing in general. As Chef Andrew said, I want to give you guys a little bit of a behind the scenes type of introduction on the Betsy Rosa beer. And then from there, I'd like to talk a little bit about the inspiration that led to the development of this beer or this partnership in general with the Betsy Rosa Hotel, Betsy Hotel, I'm sorry. So again, beer. Let's talk about beer for 2 seconds. Beer is made out of 3 basic ingredients. You have grains. Part of the grains could be either, rice, wheat, anything that you can think of that it's a grain, you can actually make beer out of it. Anything that you can essentially boil and extract sugars out of it, you can actually make it into a beer. Then you have hops, which is what gives it that floral bitterness taste. And then, of course, you have the yeast for the fermentation, which is by far the most important thing, right? Again, 3 very basic ingredients, but there are hundreds of thousands types of grains, type of hops. Well, not 100,000, but I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there is a lot. Type of grains, type of hops. Actually, there is a lot of type of yeasts as well. And depending on the yeast that you use, you're going to get a completely different profile, a completely different beer, actually. So again, for the Betsy Rosa in general, we used this type of grains that we import directly from Germany, because as you guys know, or whomever is not or is familiar with the beer, this is an Austrian style copper lager. We bring the grains directly from Germany. These are they're called Munich 1. This comes from actually an organic farm that is right outside of Munich. And we also actually bring the hops from Germany as well. The hops that we use for this, so first, the grains, this is one of the few single malt beers that are out there. So we only use one grain for it, which is the Munich 1. All the other beers that you see, like the Coronas, the Heinekens, they all have multiple grains mixed in it, not only to save cost, but at the same time to make the flavor a little bit more complex, to extract more sugars. If you want a high content alcohol beer, you add grains that have higher contents of sugars, because as you guys know, well, I'm saying as you guys know, but the fermentation process essentially is the conversion of sugars into alcohol and CO2, which gives us the carbonation of the beer. So the grain, this is one of the few, and you guys can always grab a beer and see the label and see the ingredients. You will see a lot of different type of grains in that label. We only use one type of grain, which is called Munich 1. Then we have two different types of hops that are used in the beer, and you can create different flavor profiles on a beer depending on when you add these hops, right? When in the process. So the process is simple. The first process is you essentially convert all those starches from the grains into fermentable sugars. That is called mashing, and making the malt essentially. Then from there you boil the malt, and then you add the hops, which is what is going to give it, that floral bitterness taste to the beer, and then you ferment, right? So depending on when you add the different ingredients in the process and at what temperatures, you will create different flavor profiles of the beer. So what we did was we used one malt, we used two different type of hops. One is called Czech zest, which is a very expensive hop that is also brought in from the Czech Republic. And we have one is called that is U.S. Sterling, which is a typical hop for a lager. So what we do is we use the U.S. Sterling hop for kind of like the overall process. And right before we start the fermentation process, and when I said right before, it's literally 10, 15 minutes before we start the fermentation process, we throw in that Czech zest, that hop, to give it kind of like an extra push on that bitterness level. So this is not a typical lager that is just kind of like sweet but not sweet, light but not light. This is actually what we call a hoppy lager. So it's sort of like, for those that know about beer, and please feel free to ask the question, this is kind of like a mix between an IPA, an Indian Pale Ale, and a lager, because we wanted to give it a kind of like an extra push on that bitterness level on this beer. And then we use this type of yeast that is the lager yeast essentially. That essentially is going to be doing as I mentioned, the fermentation process. And yeast, as you guys know, is just a little bacteria that essentially consumes all the sugar, and then the byproduct of that is alcohol, and then CO2 for the carbonation, right? The level of alcohol of a beer, it's dependent on how much fermentable sugars you have in your wort, which is essentially that first boil, that first liquid that you have before you throw into fermentation. Okay, So, and that's essentially it. We leave, then we transfer from, as you can see in the picture that Alexis is showing at this point, behind the motorcycle is the, essentially what we call the brew house, which is, it's comprised with essentially 3 kettles. One is a hot liquor tank. Then the other one is the actual boiling kettle. And the other one is the sparging kettle, which essentially holds, you know, hot water to sparge all the grains and start extracting all that good juice, good sugary juice out of that grain to make the fermentation. From there, once you extract all that sugary juice out of the grains, you transfer that juice to the fermentation tanks, and actually along the side of the motorcycle, you will see those are all fermentation tanks. So in our brewery, we have a capacity to brew up to, well, we have several tanks, but we have capacity to brew up to 1,000 barrels of beer a month. We have, you know, generally a lager in particular is one of the beers that takes the longest to be fermented. But it takes about, you know, about a month or so for the fermentation process. And then from there, once the fermentation process is finished, you know, it's canned or kegged and shipped to the alley and to the Betsy Rosa, to the Betsy Hotel. Okay. So at a very high level, that's how you make a beer. Now, how did we get to the Betsy Rosa beer? It's a completely different ballpark. As Alexis introduced, you know, we are all about making sure that whatever we do is about the art, the artistic process of creating something. Like the same thing as when Chef Andrew is creating his dishes, you know, it's just a mix of different ingredients, and it could be the same, very simple ingredients. Again, the same 3 ingredients that I was talking about, grains, hops, and yeast. But depending on how you mix these ingredients and the passion and the love, you can create different flavor profiles to it. So when the Betsy Hotel approached us to start this collaboration, the first thing that, of course, that we did was, you know, we went to the hotel and we tried the food. And then we walked actually from not only from going into different rooms and going to the art galleries and kind of getting a sense of what that hotel really means, really stands, you know, what is the essence of the Betsy Hotel, and how do we can kind of translate that essence into a beer. And of course, the first element that struck us was that it's kind of like one of those classical European, you know, Northern European sort of style hotels. It's a small boutique hotel. It has that classic look. Of course, there's pictures of the Rolling Stones everywhere. So, you know, immediately my mind went to a European style beer, not just any type of, you know, kind of American lagers or American IPAs or what have you. It immediately brought me back to that kind of like that European sort of classic yet modern sort of look. And of course, it's in Miami Beach, you know, so we cannot create a beer that is heavy and with a high content of alcohol, because you won't be able to drink this thing, you know, during the summertime, right? So we definitely honed in on a Bavarian sort of classic style lager, right? Then we started sort of kind of going a little bit deeper into it, and then we thought that, you know, kind of like this amber look of not only of the hotel really will go very well with an amber, with a beer that is amber. So that's why the Munich one, that grain that is that gives it that amber, like kind of caramelly look to the beer. So and then kind of like that was a little bit of my touch. I like a little bit more bitter beers, so we threw a little bit more of that Czech hop to give it a little bit more of a bitterness taste. So, and coincidentally, actually, after one of my first meetings with our first meetings with the Betsy Hotel, I went to Europe. I went to Austria. I was actually telling Andrew and Jessica before that I actually stayed in the hotel. Right now it's a hotel, but it's the mansion where the Sound of Music was filmed, and honestly, it resembled so much the Betsy Rosa hotel. So there's this wonderful house mansion in front of a lake, and with sculptures, with art, with frescoes. And I had a lager in this hotel right in front of the lake where they were singing the famous songs of the Sound of Music, and it immediately brought me back to the essence of the hotel. So when I came back, I said, guys, I have the beer, I have the recipe. Let's start creating the sort of like the identity of the beer, which means creating the labels, creating the symbol, the logos. And of course, we had to introduce the two golden retrievers, Betsy and Rosa. Of course, that's where they came from. And there's no science behind the name. We have the ambassadors of the CEOs of the Chef Andrew is showing the labels. So, but as you guys see, this is even the label, even the symbol of the beer. It's kind of like a European sort of symbol, right? So in general, that's kind of what happened. I know, again, this beer is very particular because it's very flexible as far as what you can pair it with. A lager is essentially a beer that you can have with any type of food, but because it has that little extra bitterness taste, it definitely, and it has a little bit of a maltier taste, a little bit sweet aftertaste, which is very typical from a Bavarian style lager, that you can pair beautifully with desserts, for instance. So this could actually be something that you can have with like an ice cream with an aged balsamic vinegar type of thing, and then it'll go extremely well. Or if you want to have it with a piece of steak or some spaghetti and meatballs, which I love from the alley, of course. My daughter is the only thing that she eats, actually. So it could go very, very well with this type of food. So it's very versatile on the taste, and it's very versatile in how we can pair it with. So so in general, this is the brand, this is the beer, and again, if there is any questions, feel free to ask them. Chef Andrew, if you want to add anything as far as pairings or anything like that, feel free.
Well, I mean, I will say that it's very hot outside, and it's a great beer to drink outside, because I know typically when you're drinking outside, or if you're at the beach, or if you're in a weather where it's like South Florida, you don't want to drink anything too heavy, because then it just it's a bomb on your stomach, and it's hard to eat anything. I will say what I really like about this particular beer is that it's very light, and as you eat, you don't feel heavy. So it also has a nice acidic quality, a nice floral aroma that just kind of goes well with a lot of things, especially like barbecue. And with 4th of July around the corner, it's definitely going to be a great thing to have, for sure. I do have one question in the group chat. It does ask, do you offer tours of the brewery once the COVID-19 allows, of course?
Yes, of course. So our brewery is up in Pompano Beach. We partner up with this brewery called 26 Degrees. We are, that's where we work, where we do all our beers. Definitely once this pandemic ends, there is certain schedules for tours. The bar, the tap room is already opened. This brewery is, again, it's called 26 Degrees. It's out of Atlantic Boulevard in Pompano Beach. Just a little bit east of US 1. So definitely, that's something that you guys should check it out.
Cool. Awesome.
Okay. Any additional questions? Again, our emails, my email is just david@houseofmotor.com. Alexis' email is alexis@houseofmotor.com. Please feel free to send us emails if you guys are interested. Even in the tours, we can definitely send different schedules and things of that nature once we are opened for tours. And then, you know, of course, Instagram, social media, you know, you guys can follow the brand. And of course, you know, please follow the Betsy Hotel as we introduce the Betsy Rosa to different, you know, endeavors.
Here's another question. Where can you buy the motorcycle?
You can
Definitely. Yeah, you can send us so like the beer, for instance. So the beer, the way we design our beers is through that creative process, right? So we wanted to make sure that the motorcycles is the same. If you guys are interested in the motorcycles, it's going to be a motorcycle that is designed for you as an individual. So we will go through we will sit down with the person that is interested in the motorcycle. We will ask a series of questions, and we will essentially tailor make that motorcycle for your taste. I mean, from the leather color to the color of the motorcycle itself. We use, of course, European style motorcycles. So we use only Ducatis, Triumphs, and BMWs. But we have certain, for the Triumph, for instance, the one that you're seeing, this is a Truxton, a Triumph, which is an English a motorcycle. We have a kit that we sell, which is the front fairing, where you see the 20. The leather we brought from Argentina is hand stitched over here. And then I wish, Alexis, would you able to show a few pictures of the motorcycle?
Yeah, I think we have it here. In this case, yeah, this.
Yeah. So that front fairing, it could be customized to your likings, and the fairing is the shield and the.
In this case, yeah, we actually have the light up logo of the brand, and then obviously what David is saying, the custom stitching and the Chanel pattern on the seat, and obviously, you know, that we actually water jet the metal piece, and then we inserted the leather that runs around the tank. So there is a lot of details to see in the, you know, in the light up logos that actually are built into the shell of the kind of like the motorcycle, you know. So it gets that retro look, you know, on the bike, you know, that's actually a brand new bike from 2018. So it's completely different. It doesn't look like that, but it's more like that behind the scenes of the Cafe Racers kind of brand, you know, which it goes again to the Cafe Racers, so Cafe, because they were doing the legal races on the 20s and the 60s in England in the ABC Cafe. So, and that's where everything started, you know, that is about like losing weight on a vehicle, you know, so you can go faster on the race. So that's where that culture comes in. And actually House of Motor is part of like what is called the Gentleman's Ride in Florida, with actually really local oriented with local craftsmanship. And we actually partnership with them, which is like a big ride that maybe some people know if they're on the bike world. And it happens every year around the world. There's more than 20,000 bikers around the world. They do like a route, and they basically is defined in different cities, you know. So it happens more in I don't know how many 100 countries and 200 cities the same day, and they basically document that ride, and it's all about like vintage, you know. So it goes along with and it's funny, you know, because that goes along with the Betsy, you know. When you go there, it's like a timeless, you know, like a time machine, you know. It's actually really welcoming, you know. Yeah. And it's kind of like this last like calm space, you know, that you can imagine yourself, like David was saying, you know, like in Europe, you know, and about that era, you know, that it's in Miami Beach, but it's not Miami Beach like, you know, which is that thing is that's a beautiful side of it about the Betsy, you know, that I think that's what it makes it unique, you know, that it's not, it doesn't belong to their location, which is actually a good thing in this case. Their location is fantastic. And don't take it wrong, you know, but it doesn't belong there, which is actually a big achievement, you know. in a positive way. And I think it's the food and everything. It talks about the same thing. Even the music programming. I mean, nobody has better music programming in the Betsy when we were able to go in public places and have live music. So and hopefully it's gonna get back really, really soon. But that experience, I mean, it's something that goes. I mean, when you go to a place, and that one, we wanted to translate that into the beer, into motorcycles, into anything that at the end of the day we design, One thing is a bike, one thing is designing a recipe, So everything comes from the same thing, It's just making it work.
No, absolutely. Somebody asked about private group events. Do you guys offer that usually?
I mean,
You mean at the brewery?
I'm assuming so. I'm just reading the question.
Yeah. No, there are. Yeah, the brewery definitely. There is that possibility to actually to do private group events at the brewery, they're kind of cool because there is of course a tap room that you guys can try different types of beer. There are over 20 types of beers at the tap room, and also you guys can tour the brewery and kind of have. I give a very high level overview of the beer brewing process, but once you're in the brewery and you can start seeing the dimensions of the tanks, they're 30, 40 feet tall, and really gives that appreciation of how a little bacteria, which is the yeast, can turn this hot mess into a beer, and the amounts of it. It's kind of cool. So for sure, once the COVID-19 ends, we'll definitely, that's something that can give you information on.
Cool, great. Another question: what makes the beer pink? I guess referring to the copper color.
The beer is not pink. The beer is amber. It's kind of like brown copper color.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, what makes it that color?
Oh, the amber. So the malt, as I mentioned. So definitely the malt that we use is, again, that German malt has that. Once you extract, again, you essentially boil the Munich 1 grain. That juice that comes out of that, it has that maltier amber color. But in general, I mean, you can make a beer any type of color you want. Actually, there is a brewery here in Miami called the name escapes me. I'm sorry. They actually make pink beer. What they do is that they add ginger to it, so it becomes actually pink. So yeah.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's called JW Brewing.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Jake Wakefield Brewing. They actually make the special beer that is pink.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So another question: what made you interested in this venture?
So go ahead, Alexis.
I think it's because we're curious beings. I think there's nothing wrong about like experiencing things. I think it's me personally in my level as an architect, designer, and what I do, I'm constantly like putting myself in uncomfortable situations, and I'm more interested in the process, and what it comes out of it, and I think it's besides that we were friends for a lot of years, and we share the same hobbies and the same passions. There was an opportunity there about like what a chemist and an architect can do together, So it's kind of like a weird mix, and we're both in the professional world, and we see a lot of like opportunity in that sense that we can bring a different reading on what about a beer, and what about like a product that is not. We're living in a digital world. Everything is manufactured. Everything is like serial. I mean, it's done in a speed way, and like everything is to be done on a time of an essence thing, and we want to basically focus or create a brand that it doesn't have any attachments to time or any attachments to to basically anything, any kind of responsibility, but something that we can put the time on it to do what we like, you know? So, and that brand is what it is, you know? We design and we do the things that we like, and we put the time that we like to put into the time. It's not conceived out of like an efficiency rate, you know? Let's put it this way, you know? We just want to do good products. And I think that's what it actually created that venture, you know? I think it's like, with our expertise, you know, in different fields, you know, I think is we can put things together that are actually quite appealing, you know, and it will continue, you know, it's a brand that it can evolve, you know, so we have a few projects on the way that on collaborations that we said before that I think can lead to like really interesting things, you know, and that's where it brought us to here, you know.
Oh, that's cool. That I can relate. I mean, it's in the food world, it's very much a thing where you collaborate, where you have shared interests, where you have shared passions, and you put as much into it as you are passionate about, you know? You don't force something out of just, well, let's make dinner, but anybody can make dinner. Let's do something special.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, as I mentioned, you know, like with making food, you know, I forgot to mention that Alexis is from Barcelona. I'm originally from Colombia. We've traveled Europe and the world, and one of the things that I really enjoyed about trying food and different beers from different countries is the simplicity to it, right? So, like, let's say in Italy, you know, you have a handmade pasta with just a little bit of tomato sauce, but that tomato sauce is from this, you know, organic tomatoes that just got picked. And that's all that it is, with a little bit of, you know, Parmigiano. And that's all that it is, but it makes such a big difference, right? So you know, it's all about the passion and the time and consideration that you put into it. And it's the same thing with beer. Again, it's very three simple ingredients, but you can create so many different things out of three simple ingredients.
That's cool. Yeah, and I didn't realize before about the single grain beer not being so common. I guess that's a good point. It's like an olive oil, like
exactly.
Olives, because most of the olive oils, if you look at the packs, it's got olives from everywhere. The same as like a whiskey. Any malt essentially is just mix of different things, you know, different type of malts, but at the end is you know, those single malt whiskeys, single malt beers, is that it gives us kind of like that clearness to it. I don't know if I can make myself understood, but it's just the taste is a lot clearer. The taste it's a lot more transparent. It's not that complex, but at the same time it's complex because of its simplicity, you know. Nice.
But I think it's like in that flavor, and correct me, David, I mean, on the sense of like the process of making beer and the single grain beer is because it's really delicate on the fermentation process to control the pH and everything on the beer being a single malt, you know? That's why they mix it normally, you know, because it's easier to get the same type of flavor. Instead of like when you're just dealing with one, the process is so delicate in terms of like the timing of it, that it basically, the secret of it, you know, is like getting the same exact flavor every time that you brew the beer. You know, we literally need to basically account all the molecules and everything like by thousands, you know, to make sure that we're on the same point. So basically that guarantees that we're going to have the same exact flavor when we finish the fermentation process, you know? So that's what it makes interesting. So it's really, as I was saying, it's really simple in terms of ingredients, but it's more complex on process. And it's the same thing like making a good pasta. If we do an analogy of food, you know, it's really easy to cook pasta. Everyone can do it, but have a pasta al dente, you know, and the right timing and everything. So it's exquisite, you know. It's really complicated. It's not that easy, you know. And so that how much, you know, like fire, everything, you know, so you control the ingredients. But it's a simple pasta, you know. But from tasting good or tasting like normal, it's that's the complicated part. So that's why it happens with the Betsy Rosa process, you know. Is that kind of like precision, you know, in that process was literally like a chemistry thing, you know. It goes to literally counting atoms and molecules on how we're doing. That's the only like level that we have to make sure that we're gonna guarantee the same flavor, you know, because we don't put our fingers into the tanks and say, okay, it's tasting good, you know. so
yeah. And usually the simpler the things, it's the less things you have to hide behind, you know. You know, when cooking, and we talk about cooking, you know, as a cook, when you start out, you always tend to be complicating things. You know, you want to add sauces, you want to add another vegetable, another meat, another, you know, component to the dish, and you're complicating it. And then as you sort of develop and you become a better cook, and typically as you get older, you tend to take things away. You take things away. And, you know, I would say chefs that are a lot more mature, you know, you look at their plate and it's 3 components, you know, and there's less things behind, because it's the technique, it's the sourcing, and it's letting the product speak for itself. So in many ways, it's what you guys are doing exactly, you know. So that's
yep. Yeah, that's exactly it. And then of course the quality of the ingredients, right?
Yeah.
It's everything, right? You know, so it's, as I said, you know, we didn't want to save by bringing something from here, not necessarily saying that there are no good farms of, let's say, grains or hops here in the United States, because there is, but you know, we wanted to make sure to stay true to the recipe and the style of this beer. You know, by bringing those German and Austrian hops, and you know, making this beer with those.
Cool. Somebody asked, how many types of beers do you produce?
So we produce right now our flagship. You know, we generally I like to produce lagers in general. Those are our flagships. However, we do produce an IPA, which is an India Pale Ale, and then we also have a stout as part of our portfolio. However, our brewery, we do small batches of you know, different types of beer. So we did definitely have you know, hoppier, high content alcohol IPAs. We do have like coffee stouts. We generally do like a maple syrup stout, which is a very heavy beer, but it's good for like winter time. So it depends, you know. It just we do small batches as well. So it depends on the season. We do certain specials, and you know, so. In general, because of course we're in Miami, we're in a very hot state. Lagers generally are the ones that really, you know, are the ones that really people would like to drink. So that's kind of what we make.
Yeah, of course. Oh, cool. Interesting. Great. Let's see if there's any other questions. This question about the marketing behind it, I guess we pretty much talked about that. And the stories, I really like, you know, I will say, because I didn't know the whole story about how you guys came and immersed yourselves in the hotel and got the whole experience. That's pretty cool, because you don't really hear too much of that. And then, you know, kind of making that comparison to Europe, and I can definitely see, you know, what David meant, and where, you know, hearing the story, I can certainly see where the dots are connected, you know. And you know, when I first came to the Betsy too, I certainly saw that and felt that as well. So it's interesting that he said that, and it's interesting that he made that comparison. So it's very cool. There's a question about where are the beers sold. So the Betsy Rosa beer is only sold here at the Betsy Hotel. And we sell them for $7 a piece. And we also have them, we also have it available on tap. So if you come in, you can enjoy it in person, or you can also get it to go, and we deliver. So that's the cool thing about that. And we're excited about the cans because we just got these in. So we're very excited to have the can version. And, you know, for 4th of July coming up, we're going to have some specials, and we're going to pair that. We're going to create a menu paired with the Betsy Rosa beers. So we're excited to do that too. So great question.
Getting hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thirsty.
I'm thirsty. Yeah, stop showing the beers we have here.
No, I've been fighting to crack this open and to enjoy it, because I'm like, I know most people don't have it in front of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been holding back, but we'll definitely crack into one later.
For sure.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time. I guess if there's no more questions, we're gonna wrap it up here. Alexis, David, any other last thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, definitely. I hope you guys enjoy the beer. Please go to Betsy Rosa, drink it cold. That beer, you know, almost at freezing point. It's amazing, and enjoy it with a nice pasta or a dessert, you know, from Dali.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
And thank you very much for having us, honestly. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, David. And thank you to everybody tuning in. We really appreciate the questions, and we appreciate you sharing your afternoon with us and learning about our amazing Betsy Rosa beer. So remember, if you want to come by the Alley Restaurant or the Betsy Hotel, we have it available for delivery, pickup, or enjoy it in the restaurant. So thanks, guys, again for your time, and thank you all for tuning in. Please make sure to tune in next week. We'll be talking to our friends at Panther Coffee. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a good afternoon, everyone. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.